They want security for themselves and their family, a better life for their children, and a basic degree of tolerance and acceptance of what they believe against other people. Everyone was expressed it that way. But wherever I've been in the world, I don't feel that I'm not at home. If I'm in Madrid or in Moscow, and later this year when I go to Mumbai, I suspect I will feel that this is somewhere I understand, just as I understand and feel at home in the cities I've already visited. And in a sense, London's now a microcosm of this. In the struggle for the Olympic Games, New York was able to claim 200 languages were spoken in its city. We were able to demonstrate 300 languages are spoken here. 35 people out of every 100 that work in this city were born in a foreign country. Something like, I think it's now 62% of people living in this city were born somewhere outside in the rest of the UK or somewhere in the rest of the world. One person in 20 in this city is of mixed race. And consistently, since the mayoral system was created and we've been tracking it, racial and religiously motivated incidents have been declining year by year. They've been cut by 40% over 6 years. When the chief rabbi says, and I think it's largely true, that there's what he called a tsunami of anti-Semitism across Europe, real increase in anti-Semitism, we were able to demonstrate that in this city, anti-Semitic attacks, like other racial and religiously motivated attacks, and mainly incidents rather than attacks, have been declining. It was that amazing situation when the aftermath of the July bombings on 7/7, while there were some verbal incidents and some daubing, we're not aware of any instance where one Londoner physically attacked another. And therefore, when people talk about clash of civilisations, I say, come live in London. See that that is not inevitably the human future. So why do we call this conference if it's going so well? I think there's a real danger that we could repeat the tragedy that we saw at the end of the Second World War, when the world was being remade, and it faced the choice to move towards a system where many argued there should be competing civilisations and cultures, and the best would emerge the strongest, and we would look for ways between the extremes posed by America and the Soviet Union. And they lost the debate, they were crushed. In the end, we ended up with the world in two vast armed camps, and the diversion of tens of billions of pounds of human wealth into armaments. Two hot wars in Vietnam and Korea, and many other cold, slow, dirty wars and coups and upheavals. We think that the Cold War claimed 22 million lives in the military context, let alone those that were lost because we couldn't tackle famine and poverty in the way we could have done if so much of the world's resources had not been consumed in the arms race. And therefore, you have to ask, was that an accident? If you look at the internal debates taking place around the American administration, the body which was the forerunner of the CIA, the OSS, Office of Strategic Services, that was operating throughout the Second World War, they were already debating this issue in 1943. An internal document of the Foreign Nationalities Branch in August 1943 said this: peace, and this is about the war of the world after the end of the Second World War, peace will not be long enduring until either our way of thought in life or somebody else's becomes general and controlling in the world. We are a nation of nations, particularly well equipped for that undertaking. The Cold War wasn't an accident. It wasn't simply because Stalin was a psychopath. It was because a core of people around the foreign policy nexus in Washington sought to try and create an American-dominated world. And given that in 1945 America controlled 45% of the productive capacity of the world just in its home nation, it was able to do that. It was able eventually to defeat the Soviet Union. But the world has changed. I mean, no one power will ever have the sort of economic dominance that America had in the 20th century or Britain had in the 19th century. We have to learn to live in a world of equal powers. sometime, about 20 years from now, China will overtake America as the leading economic power. India won't be far behind. In 20 years' time, you could have a situation where the presidents of America and China, the Prime Minister of India, and a representative from Europe, because I'm sure we'll still be a disparate, squabbling lot, will meet in a room and decide the course of human destiny. They will determine, it won't be a question of a G8, because the world will have turned back to something like it was before the last 500 years. When Kennedy, Professor Kennedy, not John Kennedy, wrote his Rise and Fall of Great Powers about 15 years ago, he started by saying, if an alien civilization had visited Earth 500 years ago and decided where to land to meet the leadership of the human race, it would not have been anywhere in Europe. It might have been in the area of Islam, it might have been somewhere on the Indian subcontinent, or most probably in China. At that stage, that was the balance of economic forces. And then slavery, the discovery of the New World, all of that has given 500 years in which Europe and America have dominated the whole world, organised it to their own convenience. That world is passing. And we can either have the passing of that world as violent and divisive and threatening human civilization, or we can recognise that power and wealth would inevitably, for the rest of human history, be shared. And that is the alternative that I prefer to see. That as those new great economic powers emerge, we don't try and see a nexus around the White House and Wall Street and Washington trying to impose one culture on the rest of the world, because I think that is doomed to fail. I think we should actually allow a genuine global culture to emerge. Finally, I say this, because much of this debate is actually now underpinned not in the very academic terms of the Clash of Civilisations essay 15 years ago, but in the crude Islamophobia of the worst of the media, both here and in America. And if you want to see the worst of it, go to the websites where you see articles about how European civilization is being eaten away from within by a Muslim underclass, driven to impose their belief in their superior ideology on the Europe that they're infecting. And it's exactly those terms, absolutely violent. But then you actually compare that with the reality of the success of London, the only place in Europe that matches American levels of economic productivity and competitiveness, largely because of our openness, largely because we don't share those attitudes. And then you actually look, and if you do opinion polls about the great issues, they're not necessarily as revealing because people come to them with a preconceived view. I end with one interesting statistic. It was an analysis that was done by the Equal Opportunities Commission about the prospects in this country of young Muslim women. And for all the depiction of this, and there's been a horrendous debate about the veil, what that showed, the EOC interviewed 1,000 16-year-old Muslim women. They found that those women were highly motivated and determined to achieve independence and success in their careers. In the vast majority of cases, their parents supported their ambitions. Contrary to stereotype, 90% of Pakistani and Bangladeshi girls said their parents did not expect them to get married and have children rather than follow a career. And it is that decision, the decisions of tens of millions of ordinary people, the decisions of 16-year-old girls about how they will live their life, they demonstrate, they are choosing what they see as best in a range of competing cultures and civilizations. And if we respect their choices and celebrate that diversity, we can have a world that does not repeat the mistakes of the Cold War and divert its wealth and create a slaughter of competing civilizations, but create a genuine global one in which we make the clear distinction. Each individual matters. Each individual shall make their own choice. Thank you very much.